Hi, I'm a lawyer at Slaughter and May. My name is David Griffiths-Jones, and I work with companies from the very earliest at seed stage all the way through to some of the biggest companies in the UK and some of the biggest sort of multinational organizations as well. I thought we'd take the time now to run through 4 things I think a founder needs to think about as they begin the exciting journey of building a company, relating to law, obviously. The first thing to know, and I'm afraid there's no point in hiding this from you, is there is an overwhelming amount of law. Every single aspect of your company, from hiring people, firing people, building the right cap table, through to complying with data protection law, in the end, exiting, hopefully, and protecting the intellectual property of your business. Every single one of these has more law than any single human being can amass in one lifetime or understand. So with that in mind, the first thing you need to do is find a lawyer you trust and can work with. Think of them as your Swiss Army knife. And as you start building, they should be able to point you in the right direction for each. No one person will be able to answer all the legal questions you're going to have, but you want a single point of contact who you really trust and who can help you give a risk-adjusted view on legal risk so that you don't get swallowed up by too much compliance. Principle 2. Don't overcomplicate. There's a wonderful book written by Charles Dickens in the Victorian era called Bleak House, which features a court case in England, a fictional one called Jarndyce and Jarndyce. And the plot of the book, which is 1,000 pages long, is effectively that the only winners from a complicated will were the lawyers. So the narrative arc of the novel is that the family gets into a huge fight about the money in a will, and in the end, the lawyers have taken all of the money and there is nothing left. The same applies today to seed companies. Do not overcomplicate. If you overcomplicate, the lawyers will start charging money. The third principle is this. Lawyers, I'm afraid, have a habit of thinking only about downside risk, but that mindset doesn't work with an early stage company. What you really need is a lawyer who focuses on upside risk. That means protecting the upside. So the key thing you need to do is to focus on the key points of value in your business. That might be intellectual property, it might be personnel, making sure that the people, properly, that the HR and other legal functions are properly structured. And in a fintech or similar business, there might be a sort of really strategic legal function that drives that regulatory compliance that's necessary to get off the ground. The fourth and final point I'd make is there's a temptation sometimes to push back against the overwhelming amount of compliance, law and regulation you're going to face. I cannot recommend enough, as soon as you're big enough, getting someone to deal with this for you, because your time is super precious. You should not be focusing on the hundreds of issues that will arise in complying with basic law in multiple jurisdictions as you start building. You will need someone to do that for you, so get them on board quickly. And the final thing, and this is true, I think, across all aspects of founding and building a business, is so much of what I get involved with when things go wrong comes down to poor communication. The biggest risk when you're building a company is it's so tempting to have those informal conversations where you say to someone, yes, I'd love to work with you. I'd love for you to have 2% of the company. What happens if you end up building Facebook or a similarly large business and that person reminds you of the promise? So get in the habit of being formal. There's a time for informality, but there's a time too for super clear communication.